Hello, world changers. It is so glad to have you guys here. This is our first YouTube reading that I'm doing. I'm switching over to YouTube. It's a little bit easier than Facebook Live, and that way you guys can access it at any time. We are going to continue reading Kingdom Keepers, but for those that are just joining us for the first time, I'm going to give a summary of what we've read so far, because we're about halfway through the book. So Kingdom Keepers. There is this kid, Finn, who discovers that he has this power at night. When he goes to sleep, he transports into the Magic Kingdom, which is a Disney park in Disney World. And when he transfers into this, he transfers as this half hologram, half human being. And there are 4 other kids that have this power with him. The reason that these kids have this power is because they became virtual assistants during the day at the Disney World parks. But their DNA was encoded into these virtual people. And so there was this little guy named Wayne, and he had told them that they have this special power and this special responsibility to defeat the evil magic. And so now they're still hunting for clues on the evil magic. The first one that they tried to do is their first clue was a sun. And so they decided to go to the ride It's a Small World, where there is a large sun. And all of the characters came alive and started attacking them. That is where we are right now. We just finished the attack of It's a Small World. And I think they just had a car wash the day after that. So we'll see what the next clue is when we start reading. Chapter 18. That same Saturday night, the DHIs, which is the name of the people who are holograms, met at the Indian encampment across from Tom Sawyer Island. At 8 o'clock, the park was still open, so they waited for it to close by hiding invisibly inside the TV. Finn said, "We'll make our move during the fireworks finale scheduled for 8:30. All eyes will be aimed at the sky." "Why not just wait until closing?" Charlene asked. "Never one for unnecessary adventure." Philby answered, "After what happened at It's a Small World, Disney announced that they're increasing security. That means patrols, probably in pairs, maybe in golf carts. We can't afford to get busted. So we'll cross a park when we see the guests inside. Seeing a DHI will make sense as long as it isn't past closing." Finn asked the obvious. "How did those dolls come to life?" Philby answered with a question. "How do we come to life?" "We were designed to cross over to Disney World, if you believe Wayne. The dolls most definitely were not designed to march around attacking people." Maybeck said, "A certain woman with a green face came to mind." "A spell?" Finn found it odd but cool to be invisible, to be nothing but a voice. He wondered if Maybeck had gotten as good at a look at Jez's mom as he and Amanda had. Philby announced, "We can talk about this later. For now, we'll travel in groups, never all 5 of us together, in case we should get caught. And no matter what, we never go it alone. 2 groups, Finn and me, the 3 of you." No one objected. "Maybeck," Finn said, "did you get them?" "Yeah," Maybeck said. "Hang on, I left them by the door." Maybeck's arm appeared by the TP's open door. He produced 5 pairs of plastic glasses. "I got here a little early," he said. "What's with that?" Philby asked. Finn explained, "Walt's commitment to Wayne, and then something a friend of mine said about perspective." "I don't get it," Charlene asked. "As I recall, Walt's exact words to Wayne were, 'I have plans for this place that should be put things into perspective.'" Finn explained, in the late 50s and 60s, 3D movies were all the rage. Walt was an illustrator and movie maker. He would have known all about perspective. These days, the 3D movies are some of the coolest things in the park. I think Walt mentioned it to Wayne for a reason, and Wayne and the others never picked up on it. Perspective, 3D. You have to wear special glasses. That's why Maybeck and the girls are returning to It's a Small World tonight. "What?" Charlene said. "We missed the clue," Finn explained. "We should have found something. Those dolls did not want us to be there. Or maybe they wanted our attention on them and not the scenery. What if they weren't looking for the right perspective?" Philby asked. "You think the glasses are the answer?" "Philby and I are going to take the next clue. Clouds. First clue sun, second clue clouds. While you guys are at It's a Small World, checking out the Mayan sun. This time with glasses. It's going back there a little risky." "Isn't going back there a little risky?" Charlene said nervously. Maybeck said, "It's the last place to look. lightning doesn't strike twice, and all that. A coil of wind swirled outside of the teepee, tossing up dust. It quieted the group. They waited a minute or more to feel the chill or see Maleficent, but there was nothing. Charlene asked, "What do you suppose happens to us back home in bed if we get busted on the side?" Silence. "I think my parents are suspicious," Willow announced. "Mine are too," Finn said. "They think I'm sneaking out." "My mom's all right, all uptight," Charlene confessed. "Going to bed at 8 doesn't help things," Maybeck said. "My aunt thinks I've totally lost it." Finn and Philby and Willow, what, if anything, they learned about clouds? The next clue in the fable. Philby explained, "There are clouds in so many rides. Pooh, Peter Pan, but the ride with the most clouds and the biggest ones is Splash Mountain. That's where Finn and I are going to start." "Start what?" Charlene asked. When we're inside the attractions," Philby announced, "we all wear the glasses. We'll gain a better perspective. Let's meet back at the apartment at 10. The bottom line is up here. The button is up there. Use it if you have to." "Listen up," Finn said, moving invisibly toward the TP door and eventually into the area where he could be seen. "Majority rules. If you guys need to leave the park, then use the remote." Maybeck asked, "What if it takes all of us there at the same time? What if we're wrong about needing to be close to it?" "Then we'll find out the hard way," Philby said. "We should get going," Maybeck said anxiously. "What's the matter?" Charlene asked Maybeck. "You got a hot date?" Maybeck smirked. "Not with you, I don't." The 4 others booed him. Maybeck went right on grinning, unperturbed. Chapter 19. Finn and Philby climbed into Splash Mountain's waterway carefully. The dark water was so cold. Finn didn't like the feeling at all. "Are we sure," he whispered to Philby, "that this is worth it? Do we have a choice?" They slogged their way through the first part of the ride, around some turns, and soon encountered a rubber conveyor incline that proved a tough climb. It grew darker and deeper the further they went into the ride. Aside from his cold, wet legs, Finn felt a different chill all throughout his body. He considered mentioning it to Philby, but he didn't want to sound afraid like Charlene. They climbed through a second tunnel, much longer and darker than the first. It had stairs on either side for maintenance and emergency evacuation. Only the orange night sky and a slight glow from their holograms offered any light. Once through the second tunnel, they rested briefly before passing a massive tree on their left. In one scene, there was a ladder hanging from the branch, with a laundry line to their right. Here, the water current was strong and was going to be more treacherous. Philby said softly, "I think we ought to float." "What?" "Float," he repeated. Philby lowered himself fully into the water and leaned back. The water current quickly carried him away from Finn. Reluctantly, Finn did the same, not wanting to be left behind. Both boys maintained their balance and direction by keeping one hand on the steel rail meant to guide the ride's boats. "I've taken this ride a zillion times," Philby said, "but this is pretty cool." Finn didn't love being soaking wet, but he too was enjoying himself. Then they entered a dark scene, a cave-like area, space, filled with audio animatronic figures. The characters, turned off for the night, all stood frozen, mid-gesture. "It's kind of creepy," Finn said. He'd had enough. The going was perfectly flat here, the current slow. He grabbed the rail and prepared to climb out. Philby dove forward, splashing them both, and grabbed hold of Finn. "You can't do that," Philby warned. "If we climb out, we'll trip the alarm." "What alarm?" Finn challenged. "They use infrared sensors to detect anyone who tries to get out of the log car during the ride." "But the ride's shut down right now." "But do we know if the infrared is shut down?" Philby asked. "I doubt it. Besides, there are 36 hidden cameras along the ride. If we climb out, we'll be photographed." "It's pitch black." "But we're not," he said, indicating his own glow. "We'll be photographed, trust me. And if we're photographed, we're identified and busted," Philby said. "How do you know any of this stuff? Can you spell Google?" "And you waited until now to tell me this?" Finn asked. "I wasn't going to write you a report," Philby snapped back irritably. Finn's fears grew more intense the deeper they ventured into the cave. They floated faster now as the route twisted and turned. The waist-deep water in the ride chute was getting deeper, and the water was flowing faster. "If I remember right, we're going into a small drop," Philby announced. Both boys rushed down the drop. Finn's head went underwater, and he had heard something grinding, something mechanical. He bobbed to the surface. Did you hear that? The ride's turned on, Philby declared, his voice unsteady. That means the log cars are moving now. Finn recalled the marching dolls. He had no desire to try to outrace metal boats shaped to look like logs. Another drop. The water tried to swallow them. Both boys remained on their backs, arms extended to stay afloat. At the bottom, Finn looked ahead to see another tunnel approaching. I don't like this, he said. As they neared the tunnel, they saw lights and heard music playing. Voices saying, you gotta keep moving along. The robot characters were moving. Giant creatures with long noses and big bugged out eyes rocked and danced. One threw a fishing line into the water. Finn said, I'm starting to think getting busted wouldn't be too bad right about now. Not yet, Philby announced. We're gonna hang in here. The two boys swam and bounced and bumped their way along the water route. They passed fake green hills and low-hanging tree branches, and a 6-foot-tall rabbit holding a paintbrush. These things looked devilish to Finn as he saw them looming above him. The ride takes a total of 11 minutes to complete, Philby said. If we're halfway along, and I bet we are, then the first log car shouldn't arrive for another 6 minutes. By that time, we've only got a couple minutes to go. Why doesn't that sound terribly reassuring? Next were mountain backdrops and 12-foot-high bears. Finn looked away, cold and shivering, and anticipated the arrival of a steel log. Clouds, Philby announced. Finn saw them in the backdrop. They were painted behind a mountain range. He wormed a hand into his pocket and donned the pair of 3D glasses, just as Philby suggested. Nothing. The clouds looked perfectly normal. Finn squeezed the glasses back into his pocket with difficulty. This is crazy, he said. What are we doing in here? The more important question, Philby answered, is who knows we're in here, and why was the ride turned on? If you're trying to cheer me up, you're not doing such a good job, Finn fired back. A giant rabbit jumped across the scene and called out loudly, which caused Finn to splash in self-defense. Okay, Finn thought, now I'm defending myself against mechanical rabbits. What if these robots come alive the same way the dolls did? Okay? He said, I would like to get out of here. More clouds, Philby announced. Finn fumbled with his glasses again. Wearing them, he took in the clouds in the sky. Still, he didn't see anything different. Presently, there were chipmunk voices singing something at such a high pitch and volume that Finn couldn't understand a word, but he could feel the logs approaching. Philby kept glancing over his shoulder. He could feel them too. A low male voice began narrating the ride. The scene became as dark as the inside of the stomach. The boys bounced off the rails and the chute walls. Bruised and cold, Finn grew increasingly desperate. Exactly what are we doing here? He asked as his head came up from the underwater again. My bad, Finn, Philby said, but keep the glasses on, okay? And keep an eye out for more clouds. A large wolf wearing a cowboy hat and holding a rabbit was saying something that was probably funny, though Finn wasn't listening. His ears were tuned to the steady groan of the system, the approach of the log cars. Maybe we should risk the cameras, Finn suggested. Philby said, and have our DHIs removed from the park? I don't think so. Finn knew he was right. He felt his courage gathering and was glad to have it back. They slipped down a dip, traveling even faster in the dark, churning water. Finn saw light up ahead. He felt a profound sense of gratitude. The end of the ride in sight at last. But then he remembered where they were in the ride. Next up was, oh no, the really big drop. I've been to Disney World before, and this is one of the best log ride drops of all time, but it is crazy. Imagine doing it without a boat. The ride's biggest drop of all. Its biggest thrill. Thrill or kill? Finn wondered. He backpedaled, fighting the current. That baby's about 4 stories straight down, Philby said. 45 degrees, 1,000,000 gallons of water driving you like a freight train. Their bodies slapped forward, closer to the edge, despite their vigorous splashing. It's either gonna crush us, Finn said, or we'll drown. Philby didn't disagree. Finn said more loudly, I said it. It'll either crush us or we'll drown. Yeah, Philby said, I think you're right. He rolled onto his stomach and tried to swim away from the drop, but it was just no use. The water was too fast. Finn also rolled over and started swimming. He tried for the edge, happy to climb out. even with the risk of getting bruised, but the strong current prevented him from reaching the side. He panicked. Though the two boys swam frantically, they were actually moving with the current toward the drop. Philby said, "Between strokes, if we could get into a log." Was that possible, Finn wondered? It did seem like the perfect solution. How much longer until a log arrived? Finn wondered. He twisted his watch while flapping his other arm into an awkward frown. Any moment, he decided. Between gulps of disgusting water, he said, "Sounds like a plan. We gotta keep swimming, though." They were between, still slipping backwards despite their efforts. The ride's dramatic plummet drew near. It felt to Finn as if they were being sucked down a giant drain. "We're not thinking right," he said. The first log appeared. It looked big and powerful, and it was coming right for them. Still thinking out loud, Finn said, "We're made of light, Philby. We're holograms. We are half light. We aren't solid." Wayne talked about Einstein, about how we're more space than atoms. He couldn't see Philby through all the splashing. A voice surfaced. "I don't think this is the best time to discuss physics," Philby said. "Besides, I probably know more about it than you do." They heard a loud bump and whack from the dark as the loud log grew closer. "If we're mostly light," Finn proposed, "then water current can't affect us. Light moves through water. It doesn't get carried off by it." Driven by his newfound confidence, Finn rolled onto his back and stroked more gently. Slowly, he pulled away from Philby, and with half the effort. "It's all what I'm thinking," he realized. Philby watched as Finn's glowing body, brighter now, swam past him upstream. In doing so, Philby allowed himself to relax for a moment. A moment too long. Philby was sucked down the throat of the final plummet. Time slowed. Philby tumbled through space and water, holding his breath and then sucking in for air. His lungs burned. He couldn't tell what was up, what was down. Then, amid the swirl of black, a hand appeared. A human hand, glowing, as if it had been plugged into a wall. Behind that hand, another shape formed. That shape was an arm. Finn's arm. Finn was inside the log car leaning over. The two boys locked hands, and Finn dragged Philby's up and into the log. The log threw out a tremendous splash as it reached the bottom of the chute. By the time Philby had righted himself, now sitting up, the log had snaked through the chute and entered yet another scene. This was the last scene, the most exotic of the attraction. Finn and Philby scrambled for their glasses. "How did you do that?" Philby asked. "I'm not sure, but I think it was all in my head," Finn replied. Behind the paddle boat, Finn spotted large pink clouds in the blue sky. His head swirled around, and the sounds of voices singing "Zippity-doo-dah." He slipped on his eyeglasses. There, behind the showboat, he saw a bunch of clouds. In the middle of one of the biggest clouds he saw, several big letters. They appeared to have been spray painted. F-M-E. When Finn lifted his glasses, the letters disappeared. "Our first clue," Finn whispered, looking for an exit. And that is where we're going to stop today. Thank you, everybody, for joining me. I hope to see you guys tomorrow. And remember, the world is a better place because you are in it. Thank you, everybody. See ya.